So it is welcome to Monday Night Reading. We do this the first Monday of every month, and I'm so delighted about tonight. Monday Night Readings is where top 3 book workshop alums share stories from their upcoming books that they created and edited in workshop. So our authors tonight that we're showcasing have worked so hard on these excerpts, and I'm delighted that you'll be able to hear them tonight. We end probably at 8 p.m. Eastern, so please stay and support all of our authors. If you're here to see someone in particular, please stay and hear everybody. We go pretty quickly, so I'm sure that you will find lots to enjoy from all 3 of our authors. So here's how Monday Night Reading works. I'll have a chat with the author before we get started. We'll set up the excerpt, and then we'll share feedback in the chat. It's really important that I share this one little piece about workshop with you. So in workshop, we are a safe space for authors to develop ideas and write their manuscripts, try stuff and fail at it and try again. So we observe the golden rule of feedback in workshop, which is no criticism, constructive or otherwise, from anyone except me, except yours truly. And I won't actually be doing that tonight either. Tonight's just about sharing positive feedback. So we do encourage you to share positive feedback in the chat. Authors love that. You can do that while they're reading. A little tip, if you really want to please an author, they love specifics. So if an idea or a line speaks to you, please share it in the chat. We do share the chat transcripts with our authors, and it's very meaningful for them. So we're going to go ahead and get started in our lineup tonight. I believe Mara Yale is kicking us off. Is that right, Laura?
That is correct.
I need to introduce Laura Stone, who is our Dean of Students at Top 3 Book Workshop, and she'll be introducing our authors tonight.
So our first reader tonight is the fabulous Mara Yale. Mara helps children and adults facing neurological difficulties and pain. In her 20s, she used Feldenkrais. Am I saying that right, Mara? Feldenkrais? Feldenkrais, thank you, to ease sports-induced chronic shoulder pain. After completing professional Feldenkrais training, her younger daughter had a stroke at birth. Mara applied principles of neuroplasticity to foster her daughter's remarkable recovery. She brings scientific inquiry and a collaboration to her work based on prior careers in geophysics and software engineering. Mara is a Guild-certified Feldenkrais practitioner, trained in hand-in-hand parenting and training in somatic experiencing, holds a PhD in geophysics. She's very much, just an underachiever here, and played Division I ice hockey. She lives near Boston with her 2 daughters, who I saw here tonight. Hi, girls.
Mara, as we do in workshop, I'm going to ask you questions you're very familiar with answering. So I'm sure you'll be ready to go. Mara, tell us, who is your reader?
I'm writing for parents who want to map to the future but feel overwhelmed due to an early diagnosis for their child.
And for those readers, what is your core message?
Parents create the optimal conditions for development.
Love that, is one of my fave core messages. And what is your promise to these readers, Mara?
By the end of this book, you will become the guide that your child needs for this unexpected journey.
So good. I love that. So I want to just ask you a quick little question about your inspiration for this book, and what, obviously your daughter, but why you wanted to write the book. I mean, there's lots of ways that you can share your knowledge. So why a book?
This book doesn't exist. So I've been a mom for 14 years and a mom to a stroke survivor for almost 12 years. And I wrote a book that I would have liked to have, and a book that a lot of parents that I've encountered in the past 12 years would benefit from. So I really have become a resource for a lot of families. Some of them are on here, and think that there's a lot that I can offer.
Well, I know how hard you've worked on it, and now you've created this thing that you needed. And those are some of the best books in the world, are the books written by people who needed that book, so they wrote it. Can you set up the excerpt for everybody here? Give us the context for what we'll be hearing.
Yeah, so chapter 1 in my book is called It Will All Be Okay. And it begins with the diagnosis with my daughter in having to be transferred from one hospital to another, and then in the neonatal intensive care unit. So I'm not going to read that, but that's the beginning of chapter 1. And the end of chapter 1 is what I am going to read. And it's a story called Goalie Gloves. And you'll get enough of the context in the course of this story.
Lovely. And I just have to say on a side note that for those of us who watched you in this process and saw you write that and edit that, this is a particular favorite story from this book, and I'm delighted that you're sharing it tonight. So everybody stay muted, and we'll let Mara kick it off. Here you go, Mara.
Thanks, AJ. Goalie gloves. As Mia thrived with the new challenges, many of my worries eased. In kindergarten, Mia joined her older sister, Zoe, in riding the school bus, learning early literacy in Spanish, and mastering a new environment. In the community, she started to play sports. As a family, we read a lot, played board games, and traveled. One summer evening, shortly after Mia turned 11, we drove to hockey for the first time on the ice since March due to the COVID-19 shutdown. She began to ask me questions. This is rare, as she frequently has to compete with her talkative older sister for airtime. What kind of stroke did I have? I replied, an ischemic stroke. That means a clot. She continued, is there a difference between strokes caused by a clot or a bleed? I responded, I think so, but it depends on the stroke, as every stroke is different. Generally, bleeds are worse than clots. She persisted. Is there a difference between whether a stroke happens when you're a baby or older? And I replied, yes, when you're a baby, you haven't yet learned how to do things, so you can learn another way. If you're older, it's like you have to learn again how to do something you already knew how to do, and it may not all come back. She asked, why do strokes happen in the elderly? I replied, cardiovascular disease can be caused by what you eat or not getting enough exercise, if the arteries narrow. And then it got more personal when she asked, what makes a limb smaller in someone who has had a stroke? I wasn't sure where she was heading with this question. I had to keep up with her questions, holding space for her curiosity and any other emotions to emerge. I explained, bones grow based on how much they're used. So if one limb is used more than another, it will grow longer than the other. Many of these questions had come up before, and I think of it like building layers of understanding. My ears perked up when she said, I think my hand is more open from playing goalie. Remember when my thumb was at a weird angle? I do remember. I remember when she was 2 months old, and it seemed like she was swatting at toys more often with her left hand than her right. I remember when her right hand was frequently balled in a fist, a tight fist starting at about 4 months old. I wondered if she would gain any use of righty. I remember the physical therapist who wanted to put a splint on righty at 12 months old to force it open. Instead, I learned all I could about constraint-induced movement therapy and bimanual play, put a splint on lefty to give her more time to practice with righty until she proved it was working, when she could point, grasp, eat, and play with righty. I remember giving stealth massages to the base of her thumb on righty whenever I held her hand. Mia has played ice hockey since she was 4. She's been a goalie full-time since she was 9. She's put her hand in a goalie mitt hundreds of times to catch or deflect pucks. When she holds it up, ready to catch, her thumb falls away from the rest of her hand, aided by gravity and how our neuromuscular system evolved. In that position, the weight of the mitt pushes on the web space between her thumb and the rest of her fingers on her right hand. She showed me later. When I checked in on her late that summer evening, she was not simply watching a show, as had been the case frequently that summer of COVID shutdown. She was looking up hand exercises on the iPad while playing with Theraputty. As I entered, she showed me what she was doing and invited me to brainstorm with her. This has been our partnership from early days. She shows me what she needs and I suggest ideas. Some stick, some do not. I witness, connect, and rarely force. She's aware of her smaller right arm. She may wish it were different. And she knows that if she wants to improve, she needs to work at it. So she started on her own, quietly, simply. I reminded her that if she wants to see progress, she'll need to keep at it many days, many weeks in a row. She said, yeah, I know someone can't go immediately from paralyzed to walking. It takes time. Do you want OT to get ideas for exercises? I asked. Not really. It was then that I realized this digital native had already researched and chosen where to start. Help your kids try lots of things and see what they enjoy. If they can find something that is so interesting and compelling to them that they want to get better and better at it, they will work so hard it becomes therapeutic for the goal of playing hockey better or to refine their skills in whatever they choose, music, dance, drama, academics. We've tried many of these things, and academics remains a focus, though less therapeutic for the physical challenges. Hockey and soccer seem to have risen to the top in terms of intrinsic motivation to practice and play for the love of the sport. As Mia plays hockey goalie, she constantly fusses with her mitt. She was drawn to the position when she was 5 in house league. She asked me to scavenge in the equipment room for gloves, but none of the league gloves fit her as she's left-handed, so she holds the stick with her left hand and puts the mitt on her right hand, opposite from most goalies. After months of requests, I set aside my own doubts and embraced her enthusiasm. I wasn't sure if she would be able to play. I hesitated, not wanting to foster false hope, thinking I might shield her from disappointment. When she was 6, I bought her a pair of entry-level youth goalie gloves. At first, her hands were too small for those gloves. I operated on the mitt to move a little leather thumb loop so she could hook her thumb through it. I coached, helping tie her skates, put on her equipment, and secure that mitt on righty with a camping strap several times each practice. Last season, she asked for new gloves, having finally outgrown the first pair after 4 seasons. The new ones are leather, higher quality, found for a reduced price on a hockey goalie equipment exchange online. She's still breaking them in a full year later. When I coach on the ice or from the bench, I get pangs of awe and wonder. Seeing Mia as an athlete helping her team win games. I remember the fear and worry of the early days. I treasure these one-on-one conversations as a window into her emerging sense of self, a glimpse into how she relates to the differences that are as much a part of her as her eye color. And I tear up, grateful that by following my knowledge and wisdom in parenting her, she has such a clear understanding of her own agency. From the driver's seat, pride swelled in my chest, along with the not so distant memories of doubts and uncertainty from our early years. Her reflections are even more profound because I have had the great honor to accompany her at every step of this journey. By witnessing Mia's remarkable growth and progress and connecting that to early seeds that I planted and watered, I have been transformed. I've become passionate about teaching you that your hopes and dreams may stay alive even as you face the unimaginable.
Mara, applause for Mara. Laura and I choking back tears. We've only read or heard this story multiple times and it still does it to us. You made it through that. Good. Amazing. How does it feel to share that story publicly?
Feels good. It's emotional every time I read it, and not always at the same spot. So I didn't know where it was going to hit me.
Yeah. I remember our conversation about that story and just talking about how the reader needs to know that Mia's okay at the end of chapter 1. And y'all, that's just the end of chapter 1. There's a whole book full of stories and guidance and wisdom and just calm guidance from someone who knows and holds space for the reader and hope for the reader. It's really a remarkable book that Mara has put so much effort and time and heart into. I want to ask you, Mara, what changes do you hope to see in the world as a result of your book being in it?
I think any parent who embarks on this kind of journey, it's not a journey they choose, right? Perhaps they chose to be parents, but not parents in this way. And there's a pretty steep learning curve, learning a lot of medical details, a lot of therapeutic details, and I'd like to see that shortened so parents become confident sooner in their own agency, and then they can model that and facilitate that for their children.
Amazing. And I want to also ask you about your author journey. I'm curious if there's something that surprised you about the journey of becoming an author.
I dipped my big toe in that summer that, I was driving my kids to hockey, writing with AJ 1 hour a day on weekdays. And I always have loved to be a writer, but I've never given myself the time. So this was the time. And by the end of August, I committed to her semester-long intensive writing workshop. And I wrote most of my book by December. So it's been amazing, and I'm excited. I have 3 agents that I'm meeting with in late April. So I'm actively seeking an agent and publisher, and AJ believes that I can do that.
Of course, 110%. And so that's the status of your book, but where can people find out more about it and get updates so that they know when it's available?
So Laura has a link that I sent her. So if you put your email address in there, I will send you any updates about the book when it's ready, and keep you updated.
Awesome. And I do want to clarify, when you spoke about the readers, I want to make sure people understand that it's not just for parents of children who are stroke survivors. You want to just clarify that?
Yeah, that was something that I really clarified through working with AJ. So I started with, how broad is my experience. And when I actually laid out the outline, which is something AJ helped me with a lot, the messages are actually about parenting in general. And pretty much every child has some significant challenges in an 18-year journey, and parents of multiple children have maybe more than one such major challenge. So I think the messages are much broader. It is geared towards the early part of the journey. So sort of when you find yourself in a storm with a child in the hospital and having to swim out of that. But I think it has broader appeal. So
I would agree. So I just want to do, we like to play a game in workshop. And so do you or someone you know need this book? Put your hand up, please, and so I can see. Oh, look at all those hands. We call this the pre-order game. So to establish and show our authors that there is interest in this book, please click on the link so you can get on Mara's mailing list. If you or someone you know needs this book, it's important for you to stay updated because the journey to a published book is long. And so you'll want to be able to hear from Mara when she has the good news of a release date, for sure. Please also share your positive feedback in the chat. Remember, authors love specifics. If you can share what resonated with you, that's a great gift to her. Writing can be isolating and lonely, and we need feedback from outside sources. So please share positive feedback in the chat. Mara, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Well done.
thanks, AJ. Thanks everyone for coming.
Amazing. Okay. We're on to story number 2. We have Sue Barber. You ready to go, Sue?
I am ready.
Okay, so I'm really excited about this. Sue has been an alum for our group for a while. All of our authors, once they're in workshop, stay in workshop. It's like Hotel California, and they're not allowed to leave ever. But Sue is rounding the corner on this book that she has put so much of herself into this book. And I am personally thrilled that you are willing to share, because I know that the journey to authorship has been surprising in many ways for you and challenging to you in many ways. And so the fact that you're willing to share an excerpt tonight just means so much. So you know the drill. Sue Barber, who is your reader?
But would you let me introduce everyone?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. You know I love Sue Barber.
Well, I get to chatty when I see Sue, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sue is my 5 a.m. gym going on a walk partner, so I've got to share who she is for anyone who may have come for another author. So Susan M. Barber is a certified executive coach, consultant, and author. She founded her business to help clients experience shifts to gain confidence and be visible. The journey to stop playing small during her own career led her to create the book and courses to help all leaders learn how to show their value to others. Her upcoming book, The Visibility Factor, she builds an easy-to-follow process for readers to learn about and create authentic visibility for themselves. She spent over 2 decades of her career building success in sales, supply chain, and IT with Kraft Heinz, and founded the Women at Kraft Employee Resource Group before she left in 2015. She took the opportunity to create a dream business that marries her love of people development and her passion of helping companies solve business challenges. Susan loves to spend her off time with her husband and her 3 amazing children, her middle child, the most amazing of them all. Take it away, Sue.
Laura's ad libs. So Sue, who is your reader?
So my reader are people that work in corporate business environments, corporate leaders.
Okay, and what is your core message?
So the core message is this book is for leaders who believe that working hard is enough to achieve the success that they want in their careers. But what they don't realize is that visibility plays a really important role to help them get in front of their management, to be able to show their value. And it was something that I took for granted myself.
And what is your promise to readers?
By the time they finish reading this book, they'll understand why visibility is so important. They're going to learn the 4-step process that I built for them to put a plan together that is not just a plan about visibility, but one that's authentic for them. And then they'll be able to also be aware of any potential obstacles that could get in their way.
Awesome. And can you set up this excerpt for us, please?
So this is from chapter 1, the opening story from chapter 1. And this is kind of the pivotal moment that actually is the reason this book exists. It was my story and my experience that made me realize a lot of things about my career that I thought were true were no longer true. And so this is a story of my mentor and my conversation to begin with, at least.
Okay, Sue, chapter 1, let's go. Here you go.
Okay. Sue, why are you playing small? I was stunned to hear those words from my mentor, Kathy. I felt the shame wash over me as I looked across the conference room table at her. I wasn't sure what happened, but from the moment she said those words, everything just went into slow motion for me. I could feel my face grow hot as it turned red with embarrassment. I was one of those lucky Irish girls with fair skin, which meant that whenever I felt the spotlight on me, my neck and face turned a bright crimson color. Unfortunately, it was one of those things I couldn't control, nor could I hide it, so I had to learn to accept it. I was in a one-on-one meeting to connect with her and share the latest updates in our different areas of responsibility. She was someone that I had worked with for many years, but she had climbed the ladder faster than I did. She was all business, confident, and known for being extremely direct with people. Just moments before the meeting started in such a positive way as we shared updates about our families. It was clear that chit-chat time was over now, though, and the conversation had quickly escalated into an unexpected feedback session. It was a conversation that I would never forget. The walls in this small conference room began to close in on me as she said, "You have so much potential, but you sit in the back of the room in meetings and you don't say a word. Why do you even show up at the meetings?" In my head, that was kind of harsh. If you don't participate, then you won't add any value. You know that we expect you to step up at this level and set an example for the organization. We can't consider you for your next role until you figure out how to be more visible. I'm sure she said more than that, but I shut down. That is the moment where the amygdala in your brain senses danger and goes into fight, flight, or freeze mode. I weighed my options. If I pushed back too hard and defended myself, it probably wouldn't help my situation right now. I couldn't begin to move my legs, so flight wasn't a possibility either. Freeze became the only option as my brain struggled in that moment to process it all. Those were not the words that I ever expected to hear today. I felt defensiveness and emotion rise up inside of me. I suddenly felt the pain in my stomach that I get whenever there is a conflict around me. I could feel my eyes start to fill up with tears. I will not cry in front of her. I did everything in my power to hold back the tears that were just under the surface. I had always thought of Kathy as someone who had been in my corner and supported me through many career changes. She was one of the most influential people in the leadership team, and she could help or hurt my career. After I heard her feedback, I felt like I had just been hit by a truck. Just stay calm, whatever you do. Don't say something you will regret. I tried to think of something brilliant to say in my defense. What I tried to say, though, came out all wrong, and I realized it would be better if I just stopped talking. I was ashamed and embarrassed. All I wanted to do was get the hell out of there. I felt like I was an animal trapped in a cage with no way to escape. Was she right? How did I miss this? They told me I was a top talent and that I was in line for a promotion. Obviously, that's not even up for discussion now. My mind raced through all the possible options that this news would mean for my career. It was sinking in quickly for me that everything had shifted. Through sheer will, I found a way to hold it together long enough to say, "Thank you for the feedback," and I left the meeting to figure out what to do next. I knew that there were other people in my organization who received feedback that they needed to be more visible. That wasn't me, though. That was the feedback they gave to those other people. I am a top talent. They chose me to be in the leadership program. How did things change so much? And I had no idea. I assumed that I did all the right things since I hadn't received this type of feedback before. Everyone always complimented me on how much I had accomplished. Clearly, the hard work that I had done wasn't going to be enough this time, though. The only thing I could think of was, does she want me to be like those other people who talk incessantly in meetings and brag all the time? Those are the people that we all roll our eyes at when they begin to talk. I don't want to be one of those people. That isn't my style at all. As it all started to sink in, I knew I had to look at it more objectively. I knew that when I got defensive, there was a reason. In this case, it was because deep down, I had to admit that she was right, even though Sweet Perfect Sue didn't want to be called out for it. I thought I was visible, but it wasn't enough. I trusted that I was top talent, but I had become complacent. I had never faced failure like this in my career before, and the comments devastated me. I could feel myself want to hide, which is ironic, since it is the opposite of what I needed to do right now. How on earth would I face everyone at work again? I don't even remember the drive home, but when I got there, I went straight to my bedroom. My husband was sitting in a chair near our bed playing a video game on the TV. He looked at me and said, "What's wrong?" I sat on the edge of the bed and laid back on it. I shared all the feedback that I received earlier that day. He sat quietly while I let it all out. I finally said what I'd been thinking about all the way home, but had been afraid to say out loud before. I began to slowly say each sentence. I don't know if I can stay at the company. The feedback I got today means that I need to do some major damage control to change my perception. I don't know if it's possible to fix, and I don't even know where to begin. What if I have to leave the company? Everything about my identity was tied to Kraft Foods. I had been there about 23 years at that time and always imagined that I would retire from the company. When I went to work after graduating college, it was still what everybody did. They worked at one place for their whole career and then they retired. That was the plan I was supposed to follow. Now what? I had put my heart and soul into my work there. I sacrificed sleep and my family more times than I could count to get the job done. This company had been a part of my entire life. I couldn't imagine not being there. Both my grandpa and my mom had worked at that company for more than 25 plus years and retired from there. I felt this unexpected family responsibility to be there to uphold their legacy with the company. Even though they were no longer here to witness this, I still didn't want to disappoint them. My brain felt like I was in a fog and I couldn't think straight. This was obviously not the best time to make a life-changing decision on whether to stay or leave. I knew that I needed to take some time to process what I had heard and figure out a plan. My husband left our bedroom and went out into the kitchen to make dinner for the kids. I laid there on the bed for a few minutes more to pull myself together. I didn't want the kids to see their mother fall apart. I found out later that my husband was worried about me. He reached out to one of my good friends from work and said, "I've never seen her like this before. I'm not sure what to do or say." It was true. He had never seen a time where I didn't have all the answers or wasn't in control. I had always created the appearance of having it all together, but that time had passed. No matter how much I tried to hold everything together, I couldn't do it. The small cracks in the dam had grown larger. The water began to spill out. I had given up the fight to keep the dam from breaking. My energy was gone, and it was time to admit that I just couldn't be what everybody else wanted me to be anymore. It was time to retire the crown of perfection that I wore every single day. I needed to figure out who I was and learn what being visible meant for me. The end.
Oh my gosh, that crown of perfection line, Sue.
Yes.
I just need to give you props for that story. Let's just be I'm gonna put you on the spot. How many times do you think that I made you go back to that story and edit it?
Well, that's even the newer version than
I
what
heard
you
some
saw.
stuff. I'm like, I didn't hear that before.
Yeah, I added a,
You have the grandma and your mom thing in there. You didn't have that.
I didn't know. I didn't have a lot of stuff in there. I just realized that there was a lot more to it, and vulnerability was the thing I was really trying to go after, and that was not in there enough yet. So it was really, really kind of a good thing. And I realized that I didn't think about it at that moment, but there was some legacy I was trying to still continue to uphold. So
That added such an incredible richness to that story, and I didn't even know that. That is a cohesive, tight, open that your readers will connect to on so many levels. And I am so freaking proud of you, Sue Barber.
Thank you. I
Oh
couldn't
my
have done it without you guys, for sure.
Your dogged determination to get that right is going to pay off for you. If you just look at the chat and see how all of these people are connecting to you, and they didn't work at Kraft. So we all feel our own connections when the stories we tell are heartfelt and real and raw, and honest, and that helps us connect to Mara's story and your story, and you'll see in Francesca's story soon. Definitely, we don't have Francesca's experience, but we can relate, and we can relate to you, Sue, and relate to Mara. So Sue, I'm bursting with pride. Tell me, what changes do you want to see in the world because your book is in it?
I mean, I just like Mara said, you know, this book didn't exist for me either. When I was struggling with this, my go-to is always to go find a book and read how to do something when I can't figure it out. And I really couldn't find one. And so I think from that moment on, I was thinking at some point in the future there will be a book, right? But I never imagined it would be at this point. And I think I had to leave the company to really get a lot more perspective and to see what I had been through. And now that I coach people, I promise you, you know, the coaches usually attract the people that they most are ahead of, just slightly or a little bit further ahead, so they can coach them and help them. And majority of the people that come to me are people who struggle with this. They don't know how to be visible. They're shy. They just want to stay in the background. They don't want to get in front. They just avoid the spotlight like the plague. And I used to think it was just women because of my own experience, but I coach so many men with the same challenge. They just don't talk about it very much, and they have it show up differently for them in the ways that they're doing things. So I just want everybody who reads this to really understand that they can take baby steps every day and make a difference in their career, and that visibility does not have to be hard, doesn't have to be standing on a stage. It can be doing things that really work for you authentically and help you succeed, and that's the goal.
I love that. I love that. And please also, can we hear about a status update about when you think the book might be available?
I'm really shooting for by the end of the year. So it's I've been editing my brains out right now, and I can tell you it's been a little therapeutic. I've had some ups and downs, as Tanya. She's been the beneficiary of hearing some of that, but it's brought up a lot of this stuff again, and so it's good to work through it, right? Get all the way through it and work it out on the paper. So yeah, it's been really fun.
So the title is The Visibility Factor. I love that title so much. And Laura has put in the chat a connection to your website. Is that the best way for people to find out about when the book will be available?
Yeah, they can sign up for my blog. So I'll be using that as a way to communicate out more broadly about everything. And then I'll have a landing page and other stuff that's in the process of coming out. So very
Amazing.
excited.
And I have to ask you this question because I asked it of Mara, but what has been surprising about your author journey? Something that you didn't expect?
It's way harder than I thought it would be. Just because I think when I first met you, I said, oh, I write a blog every day. This is no big deal. And I don't write it every day anymore, but I thought it's no big deal. It's just more words. And I think what happened is that I write that more from a teaching perspective in a lot of ways. And I've actually shifted that to be more case studies and experiences that I've had so that people can read stories, because I do think that people connect with stories. And I don't know that I would have learned that without going through this class and meeting all of you and hearing all of your stories. But to me, it's just been so unbelievably amazing. If you ask Kelly, if she asked me to edit a paper, I go a little insane for gerunds now because I know that's my thing. And I can't, I cannot look at anything anymore. Even though I write it one way, I will always go back and catch many more things now because of the editing not conferences, but the retreats that we've had and just how much fun those were. So I have a new love for editing because of you.
Aw, success. Mission complete. Yay. Well, Sue, I couldn't be more proud of you. And I'm so thrilled that you are going to get this book out this year or very, very soon.
Yes, that's the
Very,
goal.
very soon. So applause for Sue Barber. If you haven't shared positive feedback for Sue, please put some in the chat. Oh, and of course, do you or someone you know need a book about being more visible at work? Ellen has 2 hands up. I definitely don't know anything about visibility, Sue. So I definitely need the book. Thank you so much, Sue.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody who came. Really appreciate it.
I love to see all the friends of the authors coming here and family members. And you know what's so cool about it is people discover other books that they might be interested in. And this is a way to expand audiences outside of our little workshop bubble here. So thank you, Sue. And Laura, will you please introduce our next author?
Oh, one of my most favorite humans on earth, Francesca Vavala. I'd love to. Born conjoined twins, Emily and Francesca were separated at 4 days old in a landmark surgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Due to complications at birth, Emily was born with a severe form of cerebral palsy. Despite the disparity of ability, Emily and Francesca had a relatively normal, healthy, and exceptionally happy life, thanks to their parents, older sister Sarah, and incredible communities their families found and built. In 2013, at age 31, Emily lost a battle with pneumonia and passed away. Francesca is in the process of writing and publishing her first book, a collection of essays that address her journey with grief, its intersections with love and joy, and confronts the guilt she feels as a survivor, the lucky one. Francesca looks forward to seeing her first book published sometime in the near future, but refuses to say a date out loud because she believes in jinxes. And I'll put a link to where you can connect with Francesca in the chat. Take it away.
Oh, Francesca, I believe in jinxes too. I believe in jinxes, of course, but my mother would say you don't have that much power.
That's a good line.
It's a good line. It's a good line. So it was suggested in your bio, but tell everyone the title of your book.
The title of the book is The Lucky Ones.
So good. So good. So who is your reader? Who are the lucky ones?
It's for the lucky ones. Really, it's for anyone who has struggled with the weight of grief and survivor's guilt in particular, and is looking to share or lighten that burden as they process and accept trauma or loss.
Can we just have a round of applause for the authors and how their clarity and how they so succinctly share who their reader is, so we can all know we need these things. Amazing. Tell us your core message.
The core message is that the acceptance stage of grief is not a hole to fill. It's just a dark spot that needs a little light.
Oh, that I have not heard that version. Say it one more time.
The acceptance stage of grief is not a hole to fill. It's just a dark spot that needs a little light.
Oh my gosh. Dang it. That's a keeper.
Thanks.
You know, Francesca's another example of someone in workshop who has just been searching, writing, searching, accepting the creative process, pivoting where she needs to pivot, following her heart, pulling back, going forward. So to hear that core message now is kind of emotional about that. I really need I really need an email with that core message in it so I can remember that. Tell us what your promise is to your readers.
My promise to my readers is that by the time you finish this book, you will know that wherever you are in your stages of grief, you are not alone and you are able to get through it. Love,
a simple and powerful promise. So I want you to set up the excerpt. I do want to give the title because you sent it to me. The title of this, and keep in mind, this is a different book. Francesca's writing essays, creative nonfiction, so in a little different style. The title of this is Finches, Felines, and Faith. So why don't you want to, you know what? I don't think this needs setup.
I agree.
I don't think we need it.
I don't think so. I hope not.
So everybody, Finches, Felines, and Faith. Take it away, Francesca.
All right. My mom's intrinsic connection with nature and joy working in her garden, mixed with her grief, turned into seeing Emily in natural signs. Anytime she saw a goldfinch, bright yellow, Emily's favorite color, she'd say, "Oh, Emily's saying hi." She would interrupt any conversation we were having, whether on the phone or in my parents' kitchen, to point out a visit from a flighty, feathered Emily. I wanted to believe, but I couldn't. I'd look at the visitor and think, or it's just a bird that's been around before and knows where to get food. I understood why religion and God and higher powers worked for so many, And I was envious that I couldn't even fake my way in. It felt like the country club of grief. I didn't qualify to be a member, but so desperately wanted what they had. There was no discernible religious or mystic reason Emily died, and understanding our loss as part of the plan didn't work for me. When looking in from the outside was too heartbreaking and infuriating, I sought text that would validate my own beliefs. I read about how humans are conditioned to make meaning out of nothing and create patterns where there's randomness. I stayed close to the cold comfort of the arbitrariness of life. Then my older sister, Sarah, started noticing finches, and my dad. Sooner or later, Emily was visiting everyone. She was a social butterfly as a goldfinch. She showed up in different yards, different days, and different times. My lack of finches started to feel personal. After weeks of nothing from any feathered friend outside of the fat, red-breasted robin that bore a strong resemblance to President Taft, I snapped. While visiting my parents, my mom made a cheery comment about her latest Emily sighting, and I shot back with my faithless question, why haven't I seen any fucking finches? Her answer was to buy me a bird feeder and finch food. I waited and watched from my kitchen. Nothing. Days of it, weeks, then months, then seasons. Mold got to the finch food before Emily did. While yellow birds of my twin spirit were scarce, I was presented with a different critter of the animal kingdom. It was my first day back at the office in a post-Emily world. When I arrived at the one-story, single-family, home-like real estate office, my uncle, Emily's godfather, and one of the two broker owners of the business was already there. He threw his thumb casually over his shoulder and asked with his signature grin that lets you know you're about to hear something really wonderful. Do you want to see some kittens? Outside, I knelt in the grass next to the shed that housed for sale signs, riders, and lawn equipment intended to shape what was wild and natural into a more curated beauty. The two kittens that had been born, lived, and ultimately abandoned under the shed by our parking lot came out immediately. One was solid gray, the other a gray tabby, both with eyes wide that hadn't yet found their permanent color, and tiny voices that wound their way into my heart as they purred and climbed on me. We bonded, collectively saved for the day at least. With an ark of animals already at home, the twosome would be too much to bring permanently into our house. But I couldn't leave them. I owed something to these lives. It was my fastest real estate deal to date, from houseless to homed in less than 4 hours. My mom's friend Karen said she could take them. Karen and I agreed that she would collect them the next day, so I scooped them up and took them home for the night. Briefly ours. Nick and I took Sherlock and Molly, names as temporary as their residency with us, to the bedroom I used as my office. I set up a litter box, food, water, and toys our older cat had long lost interest in. We played and pet and cooed over the kittens, noting how their personalities started to shine as they got more comfortable. I buried kisses into the top of Sherlock's little gray head as he napped contentedly on my lap. The following day, Karen came by after work to pick them up. I turned them over to their permanent futures and filled her in on all I learned in the hours we spent together. Karen thanked me and made sure to get the kittens settled safely in the car and drove off waving and promising to send me updates on how they're doing. Then they were gone. I didn't even make it inside the house. Collapsing into the Adirondack chairs on our porch, my whole body heaved as I sobbed uncontrollably. No amount of knowing the future, understanding it was for the best, or trusting that things would be all right brought me comfort. My head has sucker punched my heart. Later that same week, a third kitten showed up. I let one of our dogs out to our backyard and saw an unfamiliar tuft of black fur parading back and forth on the far side of our shared fence, rubbing herself on the edges of the wooden slats. I bent down and saw a perfect tiny little tuxedo kitten doing her best to squeeze herself through the gaps of the fence, though she was only able to fit a reaching paw through. She reached for me as I called to her. There were more kittens, even stray cats that never made it to being adopted, but that Nick and I fed or put together shelters for in the winter. I attributed the ubiquity of felines to living in a city, across the street from a park, and people not listening to Bob Barker's advice at the close of every Price is Right episode to spade and neuter our pets. Chalking it up to coincidence was easy, until I found one in the grocery store. I walked down the aisle in front of the checkout lines, and there was this little thing balled up, just lying there. People either didn't see it or sidestepped it. I got closer and realized it was a calico kitten in the middle of the floor of the Acme. It made no sense. With one hand, I held the items I had come to the store for. With the other, I scooped her up, my head on a swivel for signs of how she got there and anyone looking for her. Nothing. She started purring. There were other kittens, they kept coming, but no goldfinches. Technically, I saw a yellow bird once. As we bumped along the road in her Wrangler one afternoon, I told my friend Lisa about the bird visits and the significance they had for my family. I casually mentioned how I never see any, reassuring her that I didn't really believe they were Emily anyway, and wasn't it kind of funny when you think about it that I would be the one left out? She gave me a firm, reassuring, "It'll happen." I scoffed at the generic nature of the response. I thought she knew better than to try to placate me with empty optimism. Unfazed by my obvious disdain, she doubled down and guaranteed that Emily was just saving it all up and she was going to send me a really big bird. I turned to face out the window and filed her comment under confirmation that nobody understood what I meant. I didn't need to see a bird. I needed to see Emily. People who barely knew Emily would just find her in the wind or the clouds or some random bit of luck that's so unconnected it could almost be insulting. So why couldn't I? I was supposed to be the closest. Our connection was the most special, yet I couldn't attract or connect with her spirit. The fault had to be mine. The Natural History Museum, which caters to young kids on field trips or with ambitious parents that fill their time with educational hands-on experiences, was coming up on the right. Their sign changed based on their featured exhibit. As we passed it, this exhibit, for some reason, featured Sesame Street's Big Bird, a show Emily watched endlessly growing up. Lisa hadn't seen him, so I had to make a choice, to believe or not. I deferred the decision. "Ha," I said. "What?" Lisa asked. "You didn't see? That's funny. The sign? The museum sign? What about it?" It had Big Bird on it from Sesame Street. She made a triumphant "I told you so" U-turn. She wanted documentation for my future skepticism, proof that the biggest, yellowest bird showed up for me. I had pouted about wanting a sign, about not seeing a bird, and still, I stubbornly rolled my eyes, even as I came face to face with a literal sign of a big bird. I smiled for the picture, not quite believing, but no longer excluded. I smiled because, if nothing else, it was all a little absurd, and that I could believe. I never got another bird. I got a lot of kittens. Living in a city where strays are all too common from feral cats and domestic indoor-outdoor cats mingling unsupervised, it made logical sense. But I started to look at what didn't make sense or didn't require it, at least. They showed up when I was with family. They showed up when I was in Emily's favorite grocery store. They showed up in my own backyard more than once. They showed up for me to protect, for me to keep, for me to let go. They showed up needing something from me, which was exactly what I needed. They showed up helpless, but still determined to develop their independence. They showed up 2 at a time at the same time the first time. They showed up for me and got others to do the same. It was maybe a few months ago, I finally took down the finch feeder for good. More than 6 years and no finches for me, but I got kittens. The distractions that came at the right time and in the most random places. And I can even sometimes think I got Emily.
Ooh, applause, Francesca. I love that story so much.
Thank you.
There's so much love for you in the chat. I hope you'll get a chance to look at that. I want to hear a little bit about what changes you hope to see in the world as a result of your book.
I hope that people who are struggling to really articulate and understand and process their grief, even in the late stages of it, and without any of the conventional wisdom feeling applicable, can find something in what I share, because that's what I struggled with the most, so that they can feel seen, and from that they can start putting more light in their lives, in their dark spots, and hopefully bring light to others in their darkness.
So beautiful. And we've got to do this again. Do you or anyone, do you know yourself that you need this book, or do you know someone who needs this book? Please raise your hand. It's a lot of pre-orders, Francesca.
Thank you.
What's been surprising about your author journey?
It's surprising that it's taken this long for me to try this, and also it's surprising me that I'm doing it at the same time. It's hard, as the other authors know all too well. And what surprises me is that the hardness and the easiness is so they're both equally constant. And so wrestling with those and having to navigate the waters of writing through it or taking a break from it, and not feeling like it's an all or nothing, zero sum kind of game that I think you said it best, AJ, when I was frustrated with myself about taking a break and then coming back, and he said, you're just finding your process. And I was like, oh, I get to have a process? Wait, I get to determine a process for me? So I think discovering those things has really been the most surprising part.
I'm so thrilled that you've stuck with it. And I just need to share on a personal note. Sometimes authors come into workshop with this idea for a book that's, really important, and it makes practical sense, and it can be monetized. And but there's this other story that you really want to tell, and you think, let me get this book done, and then I'll do the book that's on my heart.
Yeah.
And you kept trying to do this other book, and you flipped it, core message, 2, possibly 3 times.
Yeah.
And then you finally said, okay, I surrender. Let me write this book on my heart. And
yeah.
Watching that journey and seeing how you've stuck with it, it really doesn't matter if you need to pause. What matters is that you come back. And look at this beauty you've created from coming back and dedicating yourself to this book on your heart. And I hope that you will please see the wonderful responses you're getting. I also want to, so the status of your book is you're writing it. That is the status.
Yes.
And people can follow you on Instagram. Is there any other way is that the best way for people to hear updates about the Lucky Ones?
For sure, because I'm going to be building a separate Instagram that's just about the Lucky Ones. I started to do it when it was a different core message, so I've got to revamp that one, and I'll be sharing that on there. You can find me on Facebook as well. Pretty much social media and email is the best way to reach me, for sure.
Amazing. And I'm so honored that you shared that with us. I want to close just by And like, I'll give you a chance to say what you might want to say to your people who showed up tonight.
Oh my gosh, I'm so floored by everyone who showed up. Thank you. It means a lot, because all day, anybody I talked to, I said, I don't know if I'm more terrified that nobody's going to show up or that people will show up. Because reading your writing out loud is just one of the best, worst things you can do to yourself. So but ultimately, as it got closer, I was like, it means a lot that people want to be here for this. It makes it worth it. So thank you.
Well said, Francesca. And I want to close by just pointing something out, how touched we all can be by all three very different stories designed for very different readers. And yet we can find a piece of ourselves in each and every one of those stories. That's why we push on. We push on and we finish this important work we're called to do. So we have Monday night readings, first Monday of the month. If you would like to know about the next one, you can go to AJ Harper page on Facebook, or you can go to ajharper.com and sign up for the mailing list if you want to be notified the next time we read 3 more wonderful stories. And Laura, you have a note?
I do. I just want to remind everyone who attended, I will be sending a follow-up email on Wednesday with a link so that you can watch this again, should you want to, and ways to connect with all 3 of our authors tonight.
Wonderful. Bravo to everybody. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you in a month.
Bye, everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you.